What's up, everybody? We are back, spitting and chatting. We are here. I'm Lane. I got my boy Zane here. Zane, what's up, man? How you doing, bro?
Yeah, what's up? I'm good. I'm good.
Man, I'm
Ready
loving
to
that
dive
shirt,
in.
bro. I
Thanks,
love them
man.
Laker colors too, man. Show that, man.
Hey,
That's
gotta
banging,
represent. Represent.
man.
Appreciate that.
Yep,
Appreciate that.
man. We got
Yeah.
a good topic for this show today. We've been thinking about this and contemplating, and we decided we're going to ahead and do it. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of controversies been talked about this stereotype,
Yeah.
and we just thought about it. Said, man, since we're doing this show, man, and we're talking about the uncomfortable truths, especially for men and women, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, and we're gonna talk about crushing the angry black narrative.
Mm. Yeah. I like that.
And it's a word, when you hear angry black man or angry black woman, it'll set you back. It'll kind of offend you. But,
Yeah.
we're being
Yeah.
open and honest here. This is some self reflection here. We're not pointing the finger and we're looking at ourselves too. But it's a topic that needs to be talked about and, some that'll help people change and really evolve and change the outlook on our community and how people look at black women and black men,
Yeah.
and a lot of stereotypes out there, but some of them you got to look at and be honest. I mean, if it apply to you, then hey, it apply to you. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I mean, this topic is very important, I believe, because when I was thinking about it, I was like, why do we need to crush this narrative? And some of the things that just came to mind is like we have to stop labeling each other because we have so many labels that's already given to us. I mean, there's various reasons on why. There's a lot of history that we eventually gonna get into at some point, but at the end of the day, we didn't give ourselves, the title of like nigga or
nah,
we didn't give ourselves a title of angry black nothing. Like that's,
yep,
and just even the fact that we have to identify as why is black and angry, like, why is that even put together?
yeah,
So I think these different labels, like we got to start getting away from, we got to help each other get away from. Black itself is not, I mean, that's not a country. Like, where are you from, or how do you identify yourself? Black is not like a nation. So if no other person or people say that, like,
yeah,
but we have been labeled as those things, and we have to start like having these real conversations, and get an understanding on why do we allow ourselves to be associated with such negativity, because that's
mm,
what it really comes down to when you think about these
mm,
different labels.
yeah,
And so we're just here to try to crush it. We have to address it, like, why is it there?
yeah, yeah, man,
Some of us may represent or kind of carry some of those traits, but we really need to look at why do we have these type of conversations? Why are they so uncomfortable?
right, right. Yeah, man, that's interesting you said that because why don't other communities, see things like that? Why don't they
Hmm.
put labels on themselves that are like derogatory or, why
Exactly.
don't they support, thuggery or, hood or ratchet stuff or, brag about prison and
Yep.
stuff like that? No other cultures or communities brag and talk about that stuff, but we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
may be time for our community, what I call separating the sheep from the goats.
Mm.
And the black
Yeah.
people that, are moving forward, who are taking care of their kids and being, they're not perfect. They had their days, but, they're, doing the right thing. Hey, put you on one side and everybody else because we've come this far.
Hmm.
And man, for us to still be there, we're behind,
Yep.
and
Yep.
hey, if you can't change and get on the right program with our community, then hey, out you go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's what it's all about, is just, learning and growing, and,
Yep.
wanting better for our community, for our children. I mean, ultimately, our children are going to be the next, leaders, and,
Yeah.
they're going to be the ones kind of carrying the torches moving forward. And we don't want like the next generation to be more ignorant. We
Yeah.
want them to,
Dang.
to, to, to grow and to have a more understanding. And that's the thing, like with the internet, I mean, there's so much knowledge and information and history like at our fingertips. So it's really no excuse at this point for us not to have more of an understanding on where some of these derogatory terms come from. You don't ever hear like, another culture, like, for example, do you ever hear Asians say angry Asian, or, oh,
No.
that's a white, angry
Yeah.
man? Or, I mean, it just
Yeah.
doesn't, you can't even put that together right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It
Hus-
don't sound
that's a,
right.
that's an angry Hispanic. I mean, it just, no other culture like accepts that. We do
Right.
though. And
Yeah.
why? Like, why do we accept it? Why do we call each other these things? And that's what we're trying to break.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to break.
Yeah. Yeah. And today, man, we're gonna talk about the fellas. ABM, angry black men.
Mm-hmm.
What is an angry black man? Well, nothing wrong with being angry. There's
Mm-hmm.
valid reasons sometimes to be angry.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if every time you have conflict, you're resorting, you go from like what they know, everybody knows what it is. You go from
Right.
0 to 100, man,
Right.
that might be you. Every time. You can't lose a battle.
Right.
You have to win every battle, every war at all costs, even if it get physical.
Right.
If that's how you deal with confrontation, man, that might be you. Let's
Right.
just be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we got to address that elephant.
Yeah,
There is those that truly do identify, with that narrative, and it takes personal reflection, kind of like we talk
yeah,
about in every episode, to be able to change that. And a
yeah,
lot of that comes from trauma, mental health, like we've been
yeah.
talking about. But my question is he angry or misunderstood? You
Mm,
know what I'm saying? Because anger is a natural emotion, and it's nothing wrong with that emotion unless it's unchecked. And that's any emotion, right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
you just, walking around hunky dory laughing at everything all the time, well, you may not be that balanced either. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
of course, you want to be joyful always, but I'm saying, like, if you never take anything seriously as well, and there may be a threat on something, well, you may not be able to have the wisdom to navigate through something.
yeah, yeah,
So anger is a natural emotion. It's just, from others, is it misunderstood, or is that person really, well, what we call angry?
yeah, yeah. Man, I was just thinking about what you said, and us black men, we are the most stereotyped people, and
Mm-hmm.
black women are too. But we get our fair share, and I try to teach my sons, hey, how you people look at you is how people are gonna look at our whole community.
Mm.
So don't I
Yeah.
know hip hop fashion is cool, and I get that. I love hip hop too. But
Right.
having your pants down and all that stuff, or presenting a certain image, guess why you're getting looked at by the police, or guess why certain people may walk away from you? Like, that's just not how we should function in society. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, there's having angry is being angry about something is normal. There are times, and I was reflecting, just thinking about myself, and I know I could do better.
Yeah.
You know,
We
I
are. Yep.
sometimes my emotions, and yeah, I'm not yelling or screaming or cursing, but my tone, you can tell by
Mm.
my tone is kind of aggressive, where I'm like, it's gonna be what I say and nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what you say. That sometimes could be my tone, and I have that maybe around the house. I have it when I go
Yeah.
to the gym, and sometimes at work. And I got to do better with that, because it's like you're almost like a micro bully, and because nobody wants to deal with that. Nobody wants to deal with an angry person who can't, hear other people in a conversation, or respect somebody else's feelings, values, and/or opinions. And
Sure.
so, man, bullies are lied to.
Mm.
Nobody respects a bully. They'll tell you what you want to hear, but then behind your back, they're like, man, I don't want to deal with him again or talk to
Right.
him again, man. Look how he reacts to such situations. So
Right.
you live your whole life thinking you're this outspoken, tough guy, and who shuts people down in a conversation, but behind closed doors, and this goes for men and women, people just don't want to talk to you or deal with you. They'll
Mm.
avoid conversations with you because of your tone. So it starts with self reflection, and man, I for one, I've got to do better. I address it with myself, and I can't point the fingers to say is this because of this what's going on in my life or that, but that doesn't matter. I've got to do better.
Yeah. Hey, I'm glad you mentioned that because I mean, even around my own house,
Hmm.
sometimes like with my daughter or my wife,
Yeah,
like you said, you don't have to necessarily be yelling
yeah,
but a lot of times I get labeled as being angry
hmm,
because of like my tone or my facial expressions, like my demeanor, right?
hmm,
And a lot of times that there's things I do have to work on with that
right,
because I sometimes I could just be boiling inside
yeah,
and then it comes across like in my, again, my facial expressions or
yeah,
my tone. But so that's always kind of like an inner battle because why? Like it's hard to control your face. Like if
yeah,
you're feeling something, men, like we process things differently. Like we're
yeah,
just things are in our mind. Like is she just ignoring me? Is she
yeah,
being disrespectful? And I'm
right,
not just saying that, but I'm trying to process it, right?
yeah,
So then it comes across like I might be angry, and I'm just like my wheels are spinning on the inside, and I'm just like the face goes with it.
right, right,
So
right,
that's why sometimes it may be like misunderstanding, but it comes across as like I may be angry. And internally, I may be truly boiling, but I haven't said nothing yet, or my voice may have rose a little bit. And
right,
that's where I have to like, I do have to check myself and learn how to adjust, because
hmm,
that's a constant work, for a lot of us men, because we don't necessarily know how we looking until somebody says it.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
man,
man. So that's hard. But one other thing you mentioned I didn't want to forget is a lot of us may pride ourselves, and I've seen this both in men and women. We pride
hmm,
ourselves on keeping it real. You
mm,
know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna say what I feel. I can't hold this in. And if we be honest, that can be foolish. You know what I mean? Like if you're at work, you know how to like reel it back in.
yeah,
If you had dinner with the president, you would know how to like reel it in. So it's just learning to, I guess, adjust in those different ways. Like our definition of keeping it real, to be honest, as a culture, is not always the best. Of
right,
course,
right.
you don't want to just hold things in,
No, no,
but we know our keeping it real is just a little bit different than
yeah,
most.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Because
It,
we
it,
we just gonna let it all hang out,
yeah. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get all the smoke right now.
unfiltered,
Yeah,
and we got to learn to have a filter. Everything that comes to
yeah.
mind is not what we should say.
Yeah, yeah, man. I was talking to some of my coworkers who I chat with a lot, and they're nurses, they're black women, and we were talking about some of these. I was telling them about the show that we're about to do. We were talking about some of the stereotypes,
Yeah.
and sometimes, man, hospitals sometimes can have a very ugly culture,
Mm.
and patients don't know that. A lot of people don't know that, but sometimes some of the smaller, you have these little cliques or groups,
Hmm.
or you see one person walking with a pack of people, they all having lunch, and
Hmm.
cultures can sometimes be a little nasty, and it just,
Hmm.
people are people.
Right.
Sometimes they bring their mess from home, they bring it to work.
Right. Right.
And we were just talking about the angry black narrative and everything like that. And, I heard an interesting point about, and there's sometimes, yeah, like you said, you got to speak up for yourself, because
Yeah.
people, and it happens in the hospital all the time, they will try to run all over you.
Mm.
And they themselves will go 0 to 100 walking all over you. And
Right.
any kind of, pushback you get when you speak up for yourself or you just speak yourself can come across as you're being aggressive or you're
Right.
being angry.
Right.
And just because, hey, you're saying what's valid to you and the truth and how you feel about something. And I get that. I get that. It's a total thing, but we just have to be careful, like you said, how we deliver that tone. There's
Yeah.
a way. Sometimes, man, some situations, there's not going to be a winner of the battle.
Mm.
This person, this nurse is saying this nurse is saying that. Hey, we just
Yeah.
need to meet again with somebody else to resolve this, because we're not going to be able to hear each other,
Right.
if this continues. But they made an interesting point about that, and you can't just let nobody bully you, because people will do it to you.
Yeah.
They themselves will do it. And, I was thinking about something. every black man has a little bit of that in him. He has a little
Hmm.
bit where he'll go there, and maybe it's about for his family, his child, or stuff like that. But it all comes down to thinking, like you said, some things just don't need to be said.
Right. Yep. Yep. And it all kind of starts at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You correct me if I'm wrong, but as a man, loyalty like is everything. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
100%.
for us and for just our women to have a good understanding, like men need loyalty. And if you think about it, why do you think, for example, the new president that just came in, he
Hmm.
cleared house, right?
Yeah,
The people that he didn't want around him, kicked him to the
got him out.
curb.
Got him out.
All kings and royalty, when they coming into power, if they don't want you around them, they kicking you to the curb. Same
Yep.
thing like with gangs and mafia, cartels. If you are not loyal, you will find yourself unalive. That's for
Yeah.
you too.
Cement shoes.
I mean, that's just real. I mean, it's a
That's
serious
just is what it
situation,
is. Yeah.
but loyalty is very important to us because we look at like family, and I'm talking about real friends. I ain't talking about just
Yeah.
just these casual cats. I'm talking about real friends that you consider family,
Yeah.
right? And you'll do whatever for as well, like their family. Loyalty is everything,
Yeah.
and I think once that's broken, you'll see like what we call the angry black
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If loyalty is broken, because that's just a part of our nature. It's just what's in us. It's
Yeah.
like if we don't trust you, you're gonna see a different side of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we not gonna want to be around someone that we have to side eye, or we feel is going to in some way impose on us, or maybe a threat in any type of way. So loyalty is key, because we consider those that are in that circle like
Yeah.
family, and if that
Death
trust is
before
broken,
dishonor.
it's just
Yeah.
different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We look at it different. Yeah.
yeah, just wanted to
Man,
bring that up.
I was thinking just as you said that, what makes a man become angry? And I'm not talking about a situation where he's literally dealing with disrespect from somebody. But why, like you said, sometimes we're walking around with stuff we haven't processed. Man, did she just say that to me? Or did
Yeah,
this happen? And
yeah,
and at the time where I'm thinking that, I got a situation I got here at work I got to deal with. And in the back of my mind is that argument I may have had in the morning, or something that was said to me that I didn't get off my chest, or somebody disrespected me, or
hmm,
my mother, or something like that, that I didn't really deal with it like how I wanted to. And I'm carrying that on my shoulder.
yeah,
And unfortunately, I go to work like everybody else, or I go to the gym, or I
yeah,
go, to the store. And when I encounter people, I'm not necessarily angry at them, but my tone or my delivery is coming across because of something that I'm harboring inside that I did not deal with.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
lot of men.
yeah.
We
That's
got
most
things that
men.
we're
Yeah,
harboring and dealing with that we haven't processed. Maybe it's trauma, like you said, from your childhood. Maybe it's from your relationship,
yep.
and we're harboring that. But let me ask you a question. What role does a woman play in an
Mm.
angry black man?
Ooh. Well, I wrote down a bullet point on that.
Mm,
She can be his medicine or his poison. And the reason why I bring that up is because, man, women have so much influence over men. And that's for good or destruction. Let's just
yeah,
keep it honest. Like all throughout history, there's just examples of how a woman can help lift up a man because of the support
yeah,
that's needed. If things are good at home, things are good with the family, then he has no worries. Like he feels like he can accomplish anything. But at the opposite side of that, if there's always strife or there's no
mm,
respect, you know what I'm
mm,
saying? Then it's like not only is he dealing with home stuff, like you just mentioned, right? So he might be dealing with something at home, now has to go deal with stuff in the world, and it could just be one thing that tips him over the edge
right,
because that disrespect, kind of was sparked, right? And
yeah,
he like, well, I can't put hands on my wife, but I can put hands on you.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
Easy.
it's it's just, and I'm not saying that that's right, but I'm saying
No.
like when you pile up either that good medicine, right, it helps us to deal with things in the world a lot better. You know what I'm saying? Because think about it, we're always going to be dealing with things outside of the house. That's
Yeah.
just it's just what it is. But when things are right at home, we can deal with that a lot better because we know, man, the home is the palace. You know, I can come back and things are going to be smooth. But if things ain't right at home, then it's just compiling. Now I got
Yeah.
work issues. I got stuff in the street. If I got stuff
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and so it's just that one thing that's just going to set it off. But it may be the deeper issue is I'm not good at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, I'm gonna say this, and it's just a fact. Million women are gonna disagree. Men carry so much weight and pressure on
Mm.
them.
Yep.
Most people do not believe. And I'm not talking about because his paycheck is bigger or smaller. I'm not talking about that. That is what it is. I'm talking about the dynamics and where he goes to work at, how he's
Yep.
looked at when he's driving in a car and the police see him, or he goes somewhere and he's
Yep.
profiled and stuff beyond that. Men
Yep.
have so much pressure on us, and women, it's being talked about more. And I think some women are beginning to understand and really look at it and see it. But,
Yep.
it's they can't even they still can't comprehend that how much society, how much pressure is on the average man.
All right. Yeah, that's a major point. And us as men, because we don't really talk about it enough and we bottle up stuff, this is where you get kind of those, those blow ups, those blowouts.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like it's misunderstood a lot. Yeah, we see the results, or the outcome of something because this brother was just at his wits end with
Yeah.
something, and that's what gets publicized, or the domestic violence gets publicized. That's the stuff that kind of comes out. But it's like, what about all the stuff that led up to that?
Right. Right.
All the provoking, all the disrespect that's not talked about. It
Right.
doesn't condone like the outcome. So don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. It doesn't condone like any violence that takes place, but no one talks about what led to that person getting there. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because that's all people remember or see is like the end. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think if we could just help each other to destroy and crush this narrative more just
Yeah.
by having more conversations, checking in on each other,
Yeah.
it could curb a lot of that angry stuff to like
Yeah.
getting escalated. Because there's nothing wrong with being angry if you know how to like control it and keep it bottled, so you can talk to somebody and not explode. But
Yeah.
it's like, man, we just gotta have better talks with each other,
Yeah.
to protect each other ultimately.
Right. And, in the average family or the average relationship, I think I can't speak because I don't know how, a woman thinks, but I would think she'd want to see her man flourish in life
Yeah,
and want to see him shine and do well and
yeah,
see him excel in life and see him, he's excelling not only just in the relationship, but he's excelling at work or
hmm
he's in school or he's whatever he does at the gym, he's doing his thing, he's excelling and moving, and that comes from home. How he
yeah,
excels comes from his home. And
yeah,
you either have a man who's shining, he's a diamond,
hmm
or he's a ticking time bomb. And you
true,
put all that TNT into him, and sooner or later, it's going to explode. And it may not
true,
explode to violence or nothing like
true,
that, but man, he may just be like deuces,
yeah,
and we ourselves know, hey, what we're getting fed at home, and we
right,
know we know where our anger is coming from.
yeah, yeah,
100% we know. We may not tell you, but we know where our
right,
anger is coming from.
right,
But, we have to do better with, like you said, how we treating each other, checking on each other, addressing our mental health,
man,
and really being honest with yourself. Because, I like I said, I self-reflect. I look at myself. I don't got all the answers, but I know, man, I could do better in a lot of situations.
right, right. And if we really understood like what we had in a relationship and
Mm-hmm.
in our marriages and things like that, we would just do so much better. I
Right.
know that for some, it's just hard to see like your man as like king of the castle,
Yeah.
and I know for some men, it's hard to see, you as a queen, but
Yeah.
it's like if we just had the mindset like, man, we have the potential for royalty, and to live like that, then we would treat each other so much differently.
Yeah,
You know what I
man.
mean? We would just do so much better if we saw each other for who we really are. Because relationships are special. They should be. But when we don't treat them as such, then that just compiles onto the negative, stigmas and things that we have, and
Yeah,
that the deadbeats, and again, all these negative, think about it, these are all negative labels that are put on men most of the time. Whether it's a deadbeat, we talk about his financial status,
yeah,
always angry, whatever it may be. It's just, man, if we understand that it all starts at home, and if I treat this man like he's a king, and if I try to treat this woman like she's a queen, then man,
yeah,
you could accomplish anything.
yeah. Man, I was thinking like, here's a question I'm gonna give to you. How do you want to be defined with conflict? How would you want people to define you with conflict?
I'm not there yet, but if
Right.
if I were to choose what I would want to
100%.
be
I
defined,
agree.
I would want to be someone that is very wow. I think honest and transparent
Mm,
about my view on something, but able to communicate it in a way that others can hear it. You know what I mean? So just kind of like a calm communicator.
right.
That's just straightforward though.
Right.
Because for many years in the past, just because I didn't really understand who I was as a man, going through church issues like we talked about
Mm,
before, and just growing up to be a man, I was a yes person,
yeah.
walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
That transferred into my marriage. So now that I've been in a lot of leadership roles, even with my jobs and stuff like that, I have completely turned that around to
Right.
where I've learned how to navigate and being able to communicate directly.
Right.
It may not be what people want to hear, but I know
Yeah.
how to communicate now without trying to be offensive. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So I just think if I could do that 90% of the time, it would be most beneficial for not just for me, but other people that are hearing what I have to say.
Right. Man, that's true. Because being honest, I ain't there yet either. And I definitely don't want to be defined as somebody who's loud.
Mm,
And I'm
yeah,
definitely not there. I'm not
right.
loud, but I hear people, I see people how they deal with conflict. They get loud and
Yeah,
they can, because you loud, that somebody else doesn't want to, you're thinking you're going to shut that other person down. Well, guess what? If that other person is loud too, boom, that's where
yeah,
there's,
yeah.
yeah,
And there's a lot of
explosion right
us.
there.
It's a
Yeah,
lot of us that do that.
right.
Yep.
And now you got two people that went from 0 to 100. What you think is going to happen? And I would think
Yep.
I'd want to be a person who is positive. That meaning, if there
Mm,
is conflict, there's a positive way to resolve it. And I'm not there yet. And even positivity with my tone, with the words that I use, with being able to listen to others, no matter what
hmm
their views are, just listen.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
That's somebody I'd want to be just a better listener, because I can sometimes be listening to people, man, and things are just circling in my mind about what happened here, and somebody said this, and
Yeah.
I'm looking at them, but I'm not there.
Right.
And it's because I haven't dealt with other stuff that happened earlier, or whatever. But I want to be a better listener, and I want to have more positive uh, interactions with people when there's conflict versus what I am now, which I'm moving in the right direction because I realize where I'm at. But I want to have those positive interactions with people.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think that's just like for all of us, as men, that's the right mindset to have.
Yep.
Is you just want to do better, and that's that. I mean, what else can we ask for? If we're trying to go in the right direction, we realize we got some flaws. And, one thing I've learned with communication is conflict is not a bad thing. Like that's natural too, right? It's an opportunity to like
Yeah.
communicate differences so you could learn from each other. It's not a negative thing by itself, right? To have a conflicting idea or viewpoint. That's what makes the world go around.
Yeah.
I don't have to agree with everything, a person says. We don't agree
Right.
with everything, and it's
Right.
it's okay. Like
Yeah.
you give me ideas about stuff, and I'm sure vice versa. But that's how it should be in relationships. But I know, like in
Right.
in our home life and in different relationships that we may have, or something out in the street, so to speak, conflict comes across as always negative,
Yeah.
instead of it just being like, hey, bro, you right, or I don't see it like that,
Yeah.
and maybe the other person, can accept, your viewpoint on it. But that's, again, it's just changing the narrative, because for the most
Yeah.
part, we think of conflict as it's just this negative thing that can go south real quick, and it doesn't have to be like that.
Right. Right. Man, I remember when I was playing football back in the days, I remember the two guys, man, whenever they get on the field, this was in practice, they'd always, they go at it. And then there was tension between them in the classroom. If they saw
Right,
each other eat lunch, it was
right,
always that. And the
right.
coach just made them, hey, we're going to squash this now. And in football, you deal with conflict a little different.
Yeah, yeah,
But this coach said something to me, and I was thinking about it when you brought that up. He said, war is necessary to achieve peace. And sometimes you got to
yeah,
have those battles, those conversations that are
yeah,
respectable to achieve, peace in your
yeah,
relationships, at work. And sometimes they may be uncomfortable, and you may agree to disagree, but it's all good interactions you should have to achieve peace.
man, that's some good advice, and it's so true. I mean, to avoid the all out war, right,
Yeah.
and bloodshed, or just saying something that you shouldn't say,
Mm.
that's going to be painful later, right? Because you
Yeah.
still got that scar. There's always the need for peace talks. We hear about this in the news all the time. Leaders of countries getting together to try to work through things. They're having conversations. I mean, that is how it should be.
Yeah.
The war, like all out physical war, should always be like reserved for the worst case scenario. No
Yeah.
one benefits from that. Let's just keep it honest. It's not a beneficial thing, because then moving forward, those countries don't really work together
No.
peacefully. So just like in our relationships and in our culture, like the more that we can work together and have just genuine conversations, even if we don't agree on something,
Yeah.
but just respecting each other enough to say, that's a different perspective. Let me think about that. Let me
Yeah.
marinate on it. It's just a respect thing for men,
Yeah.
and as long as both parties feel, then you should be able to come to a medium. You should be able to come to a compromise, as we call it in our relationships,
Yeah.
for the benefit of both.
Yep.
Everyone doesn't always have to get exactly what they want, but if you come to the middle ground, it's a win.
Yeah. 100%.
It's
100%.
a win.
Man, this was a good one today. Good topic. A lot of stuff we
Man.
talked about.
Yep.
Uh, man, next week it's gonna be even bigger because we gonna talk about the angry black woman.
Oh,
And
man.
yeah, I know it's gonna
Stay
piss some
tuned.
people off, but hey,
Stay
we're gonna
tuned.
talk about it.
Hey, we
If you
gotta
need to
crush that
talk,
narrative too.
yeah, we crushing that narrative too. That's why we're talking
Yep.
about it.
Yeah.
And this is about putting that negative stereotype down and defeating it. But it's about
Yep.
self-reflection. So part 2 coming up next week.
That's right. So stay tuned. Thank y'all for tuning in. Please like and subscribe and put comments in. We really appreciate each of you taking the time out your day. We know you could be anywhere, so we appreciate you. See you next week.
Next week.